Good afternoon. Welcome to another edition of Forensic Focus. I'm your host, Charles Amadio with FAZ Forensics. At FAZ Forensics, we specialize in business valuation and forensic accounting. When answers matter, FAZ delivers. Today, I'm here with my colleague, Noah Van Zandt. Noah, how you doing today?
Good. Thanks for having me, Charlie.
Absolutely, absolutely. What's new in your world?
Not too much, but I think on the prevailing wage side, we've seen a lot of interest in our services, which has been great. I think we've been able to help our clients out a lot, just handling the whole prevailing wage compliance review. They kind of just completely outsource it to us, where we deal directly with the payroll records and the Department of Labor if necessary, and confirm that the prevailing wages are being paid. And so we've been doing that work for developers and contractors and anyone involved in the renewable energy project space.
So what does that mean, prevailing wage? I guess I try to understand that concept.
Yeah, so there are projects that receive public funding or are receiving incentives from either the federal government, state government, and they end up through that funding that they receive need to be compliant with prevailing wages, which are wage rates that are issued by the governing body, which is either usually the federal DOL or the state Department of Labor. And they issue different wage rates that need to be paid for different jobs that are done on construction projects. And so those are issued usually on an annual basis by the Department of Labor, and contractors, developers, anyone who's working on these publicly funded projects need to be aware of the rates that need to be paid. And it's pretty complex for some job titles and some states. And so it ends up being a real, um, an e easy thing for us to take over and for contractors and developers to outsource because they end up spending way too much time on it that they don't want to. So we take it over for them. We help tell them what wages need to be paid. We'll help them, we'll certify whatever records need to be certified, and we'll just give them that reassurance that everything's being handled well.
So what are some of the challenges that you deal with when you're analyzing these prevailing wages?
Uh, Definitely one thing that we see a lot is just a lack of understanding. And so a lot of times what we're trying to do is just inform everyone, whether it's a developer, contractor, whoever, on how to read these wage determinations that are issued by the Department of Labor. We also uh, will help with any sort of issues with contractors, developers that don't know which governing body they need to adhere to. So some projects need to be compliant with both the federal wages as well as a specific state's wages. And a lot of times it seems like the federal DOL and the state DOL offices do not interact enough to fully be on the same page about what wage rates they're listing. And so, for instance, one issue that we ran into recently on a project was that while the rate was the same for both the federal DOL and the state DOL, they are updated at different times. So there's like a 2 month period where the federal rate is higher than the state rate. And in this case, this project needed to be in line with both federal and state rates, but they didn't raise it until the state raised the rate. And so we had to go back to the contractor and explain the situation. They had to make rectifying payments to the workers that were affected, and then we helped them maintain the necessary supporting documentation. So if the DOL were ever to come back and audit it, they would have the supporting documentation to show, well, we paid this originally, we realized that we needed to pay this, so we made the rectifying payments, and then that would be all clear.
So that's the solution. So if somebody's out of compliance, where they've underpaid, they have to make up those payments.
Yeah, and so we'll help with that as well. We obviously have a in-depth knowledge of all the payroll records that we receive. So if there are underpayments, we know exactly who it's affecting, how much they need to be repaid, and so we'll walk through the contractor developer we'll walk through that entire process with them, make sure they have a clear understanding of what payments need to be made, and then we just make sure that they have the necessary supporting documentation to show that and prove that they made those payments.
What if somebody overpays?
That's not an issue. Yeah,
No issue. Okay.
it's the prevailing wage is a minimum, like a minimum wage, so
Right.
there is no overpay.
Yeah.
And we do find that a lot of times there are contractors that will overpay. And I think it is, has to do with like the employee retention. They want want to make sure that people stay around, and so they will overpay them.
Okay.
But yeah, that's not an issue for us to deal with at that point.
Right. Okay. Yeah. They're in compliant because they're meeting the minimum thresholds.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay. So these projects, what kind of projects are we talking about that and you said these are typically funded by federal and state agencies?
Yeah, exactly. And so they're usually the ones that we've been getting involved with the most is renewable energy, just because there's a lot of renewable energy projects occurring in the country currently. And I think they're also getting these agencies and the government funding is coming with more and more like requirements. So once they receive this funding, it is, in the contract agreed to that they need to meet this prevailing wage requirement. And in some instances, we see that they even require an independent CPA certify that the prevailing wage is being paid. That's usually with larger contracts. We've seen that with NYSERDA recently. And in that case, we've been brought in to review the payroll records, and actually we certify at the end and say we reviewed these records and these are compliant with prevailing wage. Um, and so that's larger projects, but we've also gotten involved in smaller projects. Similarly, there's a New York Sun program which has to do with solar projects in New York State, and there is a quarterly certification that's required for a CPA to sign. Some people have that done in-house. Some of the developers will have a New York State CPA on payroll they then have certify those records. But we've also been brought in cases where they don't have that, or they want, people who dedicate all their time to prevailing wage reviews, and they'll send that to us again, outsourcing it to us, and we'll do that certification for them.
Okay. Interesting. Interesting. Um, so when you get involved in these types of engagements, the you know it's really going to obviously vary from engagement to engagement, the types of records that these contractors have, correct? I mean, I got to imagine that's going to be a challenge as you go through and sift through records.
Yeah, definitely. So the one decent thing is that the payroll records, the certified payroll records is what they're called. There's a form that's issued by the federal government that is used pretty much throughout. Now it changes from system to system, so it usually looks a little bit different, but it's usually, the same stuff is there. So, there's some times where we have to go back and we have to ask for some information that isn't listed on the payroll records, but a lot of times it hits the key things that we need. Um, but then the larger difference that we'll see is with apprentice records. So for apprentices that are just learning about the trade and they're getting paid a lower rate, what we end up needing to get is records that show that they're in a registered program, and then records that also show the wage rate that was told to the contractors that they need to pay this person, and that comes from whatever program they're whatever apprenticeship program they're coming from. And so that can sometimes be a struggle, especially with smaller contractors who maybe it's their first time using apprentices. They, don't have that readily on hand, or they didn't know they were supposed to keep it, and so it's just in an email from a couple of years ago, whenever. So we kind of walk through that process with the developers and the contractors, and at the end of the day, our main goal is to make sure that they have everything that they need to, and they're maintaining everything they need to pass any type of audit or review that is done by the Department of Labor or any other body at some point in time.
I mean, and most companies are using a payroll service. So, I mean, that information is, pretty standard, right? I mean, obviously it's going to vary from payroll company to payroll company, but it's usually pretty, those either weekly or, monthly summaries are pretty standard, right?
Yeah, yeah. And I think especially for like construction and those type of businesses, they use, a few different types of the payroll software, and it is specifically made for construction projects, so it does have a lot everything that they would need to have some to be able to put out these certified payroll records. The one other thing, just thinking of it now, that we do run into is these payroll records, it lists a job title. And that's where they can get confusing because essentially we're taking the job title that it says on this payroll record and we're trying to match it up to the wage determinations that's issued by the Department of Labor. That's not usually an apples to apples thing.
Mm,
It's usually pretty close. And so in some cases, an electrician, it is an electrician. We can match that up pretty well. But then there's some jobs that are split up into different groups. There's a general laborer is one of the job titles, but then there's, a group A, B, C, D, E sometimes. And so it really depends on how that contractor deals with it in-house. And so sometimes we'll notice that on their payroll record, it'll say, laborer group one. But then on the Department of Labor wage determination, they're not in numbers. It's not group one, two, three, four. It's group A, B, C, D, E. And so then
right.
we kind of need to confirm with the contractor, okay, what was this person doing on the project today? Were they doing the definition of group A on the Department of Labor website, or were they doing something else? Because that impacts the actual wage rate that they would be classified as, and we
Yeah.
need to confirm that that
Yeah.
was the correct title.
Okay. Yeah. That's got to be, I mean, that's got to be challenging, man. You mentioned electrician. I mean, sometimes there could be like different levels of electricians, right?
Yeah, exactly. And so there's just a journeyman electrician, is,
Right.
the standard electrician, but then there are sub-classifications of that
Yep.
that we then would have to go into as well. So a lot of it is just confirming with the contractors and making sure um, that they are classified correctly. And then sometimes you'll even get classifications that are nowhere listed on the Department of Labor, and then that requires a separate form to be filled out by the contractor to submit to the Department of Labor to basically say, what rate should I be paying this person? This is what they're doing. What should I pay them?
Okay. Okay. Good. So you know, obviously working through, these various projects. Um, and I know you guys have a team that work on these projects. Imagine, as far as like evaluating and looking at these, you guys are just using Excel. Do you guys use any specific software, or how does that work?
Yeah, so we use Excel a lot if we're doing just a basic review where, maybe it's not that large of a project, so it might be like a, $5 to $10 million project in total, inclusive of everything, not just payroll. And in that case, we might be able to use Excel, and we'll just, do a more manual process of looking at the DOL website, see what the wages are, and comparing it to the payroll records that we have on hand. But then we also have a partnership with LCP Tracker, which is a software that's web-based, and it makes it very easy, especially for larger projects. Because what happens is we can upload wages into that system, and then contractors can, on a weekly or bi-weekly, whatever basis, go in, enter their payroll, and it will automatically flag issues with the contractors. So they'll automatically see that, oh, the prevailing wage rate for this classification that I entered was $50. We only paid them $48 an hour. And then they can do their, internal research to see, okay, what did we do wrong? Do we need to make a rectifying payment? And so in situations where we're brought in at the beginning and it's a larger project, that's something that we usually can recommend.
Okay.
And
Yeah.
we have a lot of experience with that
Yeah.
platform. So we can
Yeah.
onboard the contractors, we can deal with their questions that they have when entering their payroll. In that case, yeah.
Probably makes the project a lot more efficient, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, it definitely
Yeah.
does. I think, what we've tried to do, which, we've had varying levels of success, but is trying to get involved in these projects as early as possible. Like
Right.
realistically, before the project is even started, the construction has started, we should be having conversations with the contractors saying, what are the classifications that you're supposed to use? Give us the job titles. We'll then go and do some initial research and say, okay, this is what we believe the wage rate should be. Um, but a lot of times we end up doing this, more retroactive review where the project is, nearing completion and they want us to go through and review and certify the records, which, like you're saying, is less efficient. And it's usually, it can be harder to get contractors to comply at that point because, they're talking about stuff that's happened a year ago and no one wants to, no one wants to, or a lot of times these smaller contractors don't have the time really. Their payroll department doesn't have the time to go and look back at what they paid someone a year ago.
Right. Right. So you mentioned you've been doing some of these projects in the renewable energy space. You gotta imagine there's probably other opportunities out there besides the renewable energy space.
Yeah, yeah, I think any construction project that gets public funding,
Yeah.
would be a requirement. I think renewable energy is, the main source for us currently because it's the hot area for construction right now.
Yeah.
There's a lot of tax incentives that are phasing out that people are, wanting to make sure they're taking advantage of while they're still around. So there's a lot of construction going on in that space. And then also, like I was saying, but some of these like NYSERDA is the energy agency in New York, and they're making it a specific requirement in their contracts, their larger contracts, that a CPA is reviewing and certifying that prevailing wages were met. And so that they deal a lot with the renewable energy
Okay.
space, and so
Sure.
that's
Sure.
how we're getting involved. Yep.
Okay. Nice. Nice. How you dealing with the weather down in your neck of the woods?
It's I'm doing my best. That's basically all I can say. I've gone outside for probably a total of 5 minutes in the last 3 days, so I'm looking forward to getting warmer weather. I'm
Yeah.
never been a big winter person. I think I was looking, it's not supposed to get over 30 degrees until next Sunday, I think it is. So I'm probably gonna be cooped out for a little bit longer, but I'm just waiting for that, even if it's the fake spring, that one day where it's 60 degrees and it feels like
Yeah.
it's 85, I'm excited for that. Even if it goes back to 40 or 35 after that,
Right.
just
Yeah.
excited for that one day.
Yeah. Yeah. I know obviously going through that cold snap right now as well, and in Saratoga, but yeah, I don't think it's going to be over 20 degrees all week until maybe on Sunday it might hit like 26. So
Mm,
Sunday or Monday, yeah. So
yeah.
that'll be exciting.
Yeah, exactly. That'll be a
But
warm one.
it's January, you know what I mean? And I don't mind if it's cold in January, just in you know, end of May to like, end of
Yeah.
September. Just give me nice weather, give me decent
Yeah.
weather.
Yeah, and then I've actually been talking to myself and trying to hype myself up to get through this winter because it has been very cold. But I was thinking February is the shortest month, so you just get through February, then it's March, and then
Yeah,
it starts to get warmer. So
March gets a lot warmer. Yeah. I mean, obviously you're in Washington D.C., so obviously
yeah,
that, you're
yeah,
getting better weather,
yeah,
than we are, at least warmer weather sooner.
yeah,
But it's nice to, and I've always looked at the winter as I go you go in stages,
yeah.
and here we are the last week. I mean, excuse me, Saturday is the last day of the month, which is great, right?
Uh,
And now we're in
yeah, it
February,
is. Yeah,
and I mean, I think I told you this before. My kids play hockey, and it makes the weeks and the weekends go by pretty quickly, and
yeah.
before you know it, it'll be April 1st, which will be nice. So
Yeah, that's always been my thing with the winter is I don't really have that activity. If I think if I did play hockey, it would be something that I would look forward to.
yeah,
And I used to play soccer inside when I was living in New York. It's very difficult to find indoor soccer here. I'm in an outdoor league. We were supposed to play tonight, but they
oh,
canceled it obviously
yeah,
because
yeah,
snow and it's gonna be like 15 degrees.
yeah.
So yeah,
Okay, okay. Yeah, it's funny because I've never really been a big winter sport person. I played a little bit of hockey, but a long time ago. But obviously with the kids playing, I mean, obviously I've been pretty busy with that. I mean, I played some indoor basketball and you go to the gym, here and there and
Yeah.
stuff like that, and which is all good. But yeah, we almost got 1 month down. You know what I mean? And then
Yeah.
once you take it in spurts, right? And
Yeah.
um, you know, obviously, this time of year, it's you busy with work and
Yeah.
just kind of plowing through stuff, and that's all good, right? And
Yeah.
helping out clients on different cases, and um, just kind of lining things up for the rest of the year. You're gonna work a little bit. You don't mind working so much this time of year, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Because there's not much else going on. Yeah.
Well, yeah, get ahead of the game, and when it
Yeah.
gets better, get outside a little bit more. So yeah,
Yeah.
definitely looking forward to that. You what are you reading right now? You reading anything right now?
I knew you were gonna ask this, and I not currently. My girlfriend just got me a book, but I don't know the name of it. I've read like 15 pages, so I'm not even gonna try and explain the concept of it. It's like a sci-fi, like I don't know, it's something like time traveling, which I don't read too much sci-fi, but this seems interesting
Yeah,
from what I've read. But
yeah.
I just read. It was a short crime mystery
Oh,
fiction, which I had never read, but I was walking by a bookstore. This would have been a couple of months ago now. But they have like a rack that's outside, and it's like these are $1 to $5 books. And I bought a $1 book. It was called Nightmare in Dublin. It was from I think it was published in like 1954 or something.
wow.
Yeah, it's an
Okay.
older book.
Yeah.
But it was interesting. It was good. And I really only got it because I was finishing up the book I had read prior to that, and it was $1. And I was like, I haven't really read like a fiction mystery book. So it was interesting. It was an interesting like, look back in time too as to what the fears of everyone was at that
Right.
time, and like
Right.
how people wrote too. I mean, it's just an interesting like look back into that time period.
It's not like it's like today where they're writing about the 50s. Somebody
Exactly.
actually
Yeah.
wrote it in the 50s, which
Exactly.
makes it more interesting. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's cool.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
I guess I probably should read more. I mean, I've read like every John Grisham book, and I read anytime a new book comes out, I buy it. Um, for whatever reason, I've been kind of busy with work, and I just haven't like had a chance. And I love when I travel, when I fly, because
Exactly.
I'll read
Yeah.
a whole book.
Yeah.
I'll finish a whole Grisham book. On a
Yeah.
flight to like Florida or Texas or wherever I go, and it's
Yeah.
great. I try to bring two books because I like to read one on the way down and one on the way back, and I won't put it down. I'll read it the whole way down and the whole way up or whatever. And but I got one I started and I really like it. It's one of the newer Grisham books that came out in the fall, and I feel like I just gotta put my head down and get to it because once I get going on it, I'll read like you know be like 1 o'clock in the morning. I'm like, oh wow, I just read all those pages. You know what I mean? So
Yeah. Yeah.
um,
And yeah, I'm the same way. I think it's
yeah,
hard to get like the consistency in that. I usually
yeah,
like if it is something that I really want to do, and I'll read like maybe 10 pages like a day right before I go to bed, usually
yeah,
when I try and do it.
yeah,
But other than that, I'm the same exact way. Like I will just when I have time off or I'm traveling, I'll
yeah,
get really into it and then
yeah.
won't read for another 3 months until I'm traveling again.
You gotta binge read. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's like because I don't know when you're either traveling or you're on vacation. I mean, you're obviously more relaxed or whatever, and so. I mean,
Yeah.
I guess I could do work in the air, but I choose not to.
Yeah.
I'll pick it up unless I have a deadline or something like that. I mean, I usually it's like, yeah, let me read. So all
Yeah.
good, all good. Nice, nice. What do you got going on the rest of the day?
I have a meeting, not on prevailing wage. It's actually a litigation case. And so it's potentially gearing up for trial. We'll see. So
Okay, good,
we're having a meeting with the attorneys. And then I'm talking to Paul and Dave about another potential engagement right after this. So,
great,
yeah,
excellent.
and that's
Yeah,
another potential litigation one. So, I
good.
also do litigation work. Just
There you
I
go.
feel like more
Yeah,
recently it's been much more the prevailing wage, and
yeah,
it seems like
yeah,
that's where there's a lot of interest for our services as well. There's just a lot of untapped
yeah.
work in that space.
Nice, nice. And I actually have a case I think I'm going to talk to you about, in a few minutes. So, that conflict check that just came out. So,
Oh, nice.
yeah,
Cool.
I'll touch base with you on that one as well.
Sweet.
So good, good.
Okay.
Well, no, that's all the time we have for today. I enjoy you coming on and talking to us about prevailing wages and educating us on it. Really, really great background on that.
Awesome. Yeah, thank you very much, Charlie.